Thank you all for being here. Thank you all for being timely. I hope everyone had a great day. I hope that your week has been going well. Welcome. We have Atlanta here. We have Portland here. Nice. Alabama. All right, Harlem. Bronx, the boogie down is here. We have some more out. Okay, Atlanta. Welcome. We're gonna get started in a few. I want to give everyone else some time to get here. I know that some of you may be commuting home from work. So we're gonna give you another moment. And I understand that my video was a little glitchy. So we do have our co-hosts, Anu and Janine, and in the event that something happens, know that I did not try to escape you. That something happened with the connection, but Anu and Janine, I believe that they have more reliable connection, so they will still be here. Okay, and I'll come back. All right. Thank you all for being here. All right. All right, so we are going to go ahead and get started. Are we going to get started with the main? No, I guess I can do. Okay, awesome. Can you all see the first slide, or is it still loading for everyone?
Looks like it's still loading.
Okay. Good evening. Welcome. As you come in, please, your name, your location, organization, if you're connected to an organization, and also your contact information. Please and thank you very much. You see the screen?
No, we saw the slides for a second, Janine, and now it's gone to like a screen that says loading.
Okay,
maybe
let's
try loading it again. Maybe we were on the video screen instead of the PowerPoint screen.
How's that?
There you go.
Okay, perfect. All right, awesome. Okay, so this is our mental wellness. This is our mental wellness webinar. And thank you for coming. If you all don't know me already, my name is Tashi Jacobs, and I am the OEF program coordinator here at Black Health. I've been here for many years. Initially started off in OEF, and then I transitioned to working on with COVID. And I was on that grant for a little over 2 years. And then now I'm back with OEF, and that's where I am now. And you all see me occasionally doing webinars like this. So Black Health is a nonprofit organization that began in 1987. Black Health was initially in BLACA, which was the National Black Leadership Commission on AIDS. And since then, we have transitioned not away from HIV/AIDS, but we've evolved so that we can include other health disparities, including cardiovascular disease and breast cancer and hepatitis C and prostate cancer, sickle cell, diabetes, and mental health. Okay. HIV/AIDS is still something that significantly impacts our communities. However, there's been so much new advancements with the medicine, with the treatment for HIV, that it's not the same death sentence that it was 30 years ago. So we're grateful for that. And now we can expand so that we can include other things that still affect people that look like us, right? So right now we are going to we're going to talk about mental wellness. One of the reasons why I thought that this was important is because oftentimes that we have these sessions, we'll start to share, right, about your experiences, what you're hearing out on the street, what you know within your personal life, your circles. And oftentimes, many of you want to share a lot, right? And then we just don't have the time to accommodate that. But that stuck with me, right? And I'm like, I want to create a space where we can come and you all can tell more about your stories, your experiences, how you're feeling. All of that is super important. Mental health and mental wellness, I don't think it's been any more important than it is in these times. And now people are more open and honest about it and more welcoming, and it's not as stigmatized as it was before. And I'm sure that you and I know that I've personally have a lot of people in my circle who very openly speak about mental health and mental wellness. And so this is what tonight is. So the agenda, that was the welcome. We did that. Black health intro, we just did that. We're getting ready to get into the polls. We're going to discuss where we are now in the world of public health, right? We know that COVID is still a thing. There are new variants that are out here. We know that polio is now a thing again. And monkeypox is out here in these streets, and we are going to touch on where we are in that regard. Then we're going to get into what is mental health. Back to life, back to reality. I'm a music girl, so y'all remember that song? Put that in the chat if you remember that song. Right? Remember? So we're going to talk about, yes. So we're going to talk about that, like getting back into what our new normal is, right? After the shutdown, after COVID, after isolation. So we're gonna touch on that. Safe space to share. What's your story? We want to hear from you. We're not leaving you hanging. There are going to be resources. And one of the things that was really important when we developed this session was that we didn't want to overpromise, right, what you were going to leave here with, but we wanted to create a space that was going to be beneficial, that was going to feel safe, and that was going to be effective in you all getting information that you need and having an opportunity to talk if you so choose, or even just to support other people in the chat. If you don't verbally have anything to say, if you can support somebody else in the chat, that is what the purpose of this is. And then understanding the assignment, right? We're going to leave you with a little assignment, and we're going to have the closing polls. So I have talked a lot, and I am going to turn it over to my co-hosts. We have Dr. Anu and we have Janine here, and I know that you all know them if you've been on this journey with us. They are my partners in this. They are very helpful to me. They're very supportive, and they definitely were helpful with with me trying to best articulate what I wanted this to be. And they were so supportive, and I'm very grateful for them. And they are going to get us into, well, I'm going to get you into the polls, and then we're going to get into where we are now. All right. So all right. Can you all let me know if you see the polls? Okay. And if you can't see the polls in the chat, please let us know. All right. So how are you feeling about mental wellness in your community today? Select all that apply. Are you hopeful? Is it unsettling, excited, frustrated, scared, overwhelming? Are you inspired, motivated, angry, or concerned? Please let us know. And again, if you cannot see the poll, feel free to enter your response in the chat and we'll notice you. And if you are just coming in, welcome. Go ahead and enter your name in the chat as well as your location, organization, and the best email. I can send you information. Well, number one, I can send you the recording of this when we're done, and then also invite you to future programming. Please leave your email. Okay. All right, I'm going to go ahead and in this poll. And can you all see the results? Right.
Good evening.
Good evening. Please mute. Welcome.
Hey, thank you. I'm sorry I'm late.
It's all right. You'll get the next poll. All righty. So 38% of you feel hopeful. 44% of you is unsettling. No one's excited. 19% frustrated. 6% scared. Another 6% overwhelmed. Another 6% inspired. 19% motivated. No one's angry. But 63% of you are concerned. And that's fair. Okay. Next one. On a scale of 1 to 4, how comfortable do you feel speaking with your family about their mental or emotional health? So 1 would be very uncomfortable, 2 would be comfortable, 3 would be comfortable, 2 would be uncomfortable, I'm sorry, 3 would be comfortable, and 4 would be very uncomfortable. How comfortable do you feel speaking with your family and community about their mental or emotional health? And again, as you enter, please add your name, location, organization, and email into the chat. All right, one more moment. So the great thing is no one is very uncomfortable. So that means that there's an entryway for the conversation. Someone is uncomfortable. 65% of you are comfortable, and 29% of you are very uncomfortable, and that's encouraging. All right. Now we want to know, how would you rate your current state of mental wellness? Not at all well? Are you hanging in there? Doing all right? Doing well? Never been better?
What we want you to know about this too is we're asking some questions that might leave you a little bit vulnerable. So, there'll be a chance later to share. But for this poll here, any questions that you answer, they're totally anonymous. So we can't match your answer to who you are at all. Yeah. So please feel free to answer and be honest and know that none of this is being tracked in any way. Back to you.
And another disclaimer that I wanted to make at the beginning is that, when I say that this is a safe space, I'm saying it in good faith and confidence that everyone knows how significant mental wellness is. We know that how it can affect your personal lives, your professional lives, how it can affect the way you interact with folks around you. So we want to make this a space where people feel comfortable and, as Anu said, vulnerable enough to be honest about how they're feeling, and maybe we can help, just to offer some resources and comfort today, okay? And I can't see any I can't see any of your responses, or I can't see who the responses belong to. All right. So 60% of you say not well at all. 17%, you're just hanging in there. 22% are doing okay. 50% are doing well. And 6% of you have never been better. Awesome. Oh, y'all didn't see that. Okay, I gave y'all the. All right, here it is. 6% of you hanging in there. No, 17% of you hanging in there. 6% of you not well at all. 22% doing okay. 50% doing well. 6% never been better. All right. Next slide. Are we on the next slide? I can't see. Oh, okay. We're on the next slide. Okay. On a scale of 1 to 4, how comfortable do you feel speaking about your own mental health, mental or emotional wellness? How comfortable do you feel speaking about your own state of mental or emotional wellness? Are you very comfortable, very uncomfortable, or comfortable? Can you all see the poll? Okay. The second question is, how confident do you feel in your ability to find the resources and tools you need for your own mental health? Not confident at all, somewhat confident, confident, or very confident. Okay, I'll give you another moment. Okay. So 6% of you, for the first question, how comfortable do you feel speaking about your own state of mental or emotional wellness? 6% of you feel very, very uncomfortable. 12% of you are uncomfortable. 35% of you are very comfortable. 47% are comfortable. Second question, how confident do you feel in your ability to find the resources and tools you need for your own mental health? 12% of you are not confident at all. 18% are somewhat confident. 59% of you are confident, and 12% of you are very confident. Okay. Thank you for participating. And now I'm going to hand it over to, okay. Now I'm going to hand it over to my co-hosts, Dr. Anu and Janine, and they're going to continue with their presentation.
Great. So I'm actually going to just do a quick briefing for everyone, just kind of a quick health update. As you know, my name's Anu Anandaraja. I'm a doctor. I'm a pediatrician and a public health doctor. And I have been working kind of at the coalface of COVID since day one, starting with getting COVID myself and dealing with all of that. And so I know that we really want to focus down on mental health at this point. And sometimes it helps to orient ourselves as to where we are with all the things that we've been dealing with. And if you're anything like me, like you dealt as well as you could with COVID, and many of us were responsible for families and communities. And so we wanted to keep ourselves really informed. And so we kept up to date with what was happening with COVID. And then there was Delta, and then there was Omicron, and then there was suddenly polio, and then there was smallpox. And at some point, we were dealing with an information overload. And maybe we also said to ourselves, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't keep up. And that's why we want to just give you a really brief update, just so that there's an easy feeding of information to you that you can just kind of take on without having to do the hard work of going to look for the information. So I'm going to go through this really quickly because we're a little behind on time. I'm just going to share my screen here. And if you've got questions about what I'm presenting, please drop them in the chat and I'll come back to them at the end. And I'll ask Janine if you can keep a track of those. So can you all see my slides right now? Great. Okay. So the first thing I'm just going to say is about COVID globally. And what you can see, I'm going to give you the good news today, which is we are doing okay. It has been awful. We lost a lot of people. We went through a lot of trauma. And today we're doing okay. And that doesn't mean that it's over. And that doesn't mean that we can stop doing all the things we did, the precautions, the vaccinations, the hand washing, the masking, the staying safe. We can't let up on anything, but we are doing okay right now. And as you can see, since COVID started way back all around the globe, we've had over 600 million cases and over 6 million deaths. And we had these peaks. The numbers weren't so good early on because we weren't tracking the disease so well, but you can see around January this year, we had a peak that was Omicron, and now the numbers have kind of steadily fallen. We get another little peak where we had another variant pop up, but we're kind of on a downward decline in terms of cases and deaths around the globe. So that's good news. For some reason, when I'm screen sharing, oops, no, that's not where we want to be. Okay, so where are we in the US? And you can see the same kind of graph. So these are the number of deaths per 100,000 people in the US. And you can see again here, this is when we were in the terror of COVID when it first arrived in 2020. Then we had Delta. Then we had this kind of Omicron. We had this little variant that hit us here where we are now. And our numbers are declining overall in the US. And the same is actually true in New York City. I know a lot of us are here in New York City. We can see that our cases are coming down, our hospitalizations are coming down, and our deaths are coming down. Now, we're not at zero, and every person we lose is a loss, right? But this is just to say we are seeing declining rates, we are holding steady, and we know what to do at this point. And we just got to keep doing it. I'm going to keep going. The cautionary piece to all of this, when I say we're doing better, is just this map on the right-hand side, which is really red right now. The red means that we have high community transmission. So although we're doing better in the number of cases that are being reported, and although we're not getting a lot of hospitalizations or deaths, there is still a lot of COVID hanging around in our community and getting passed from person to person. I know we all know someone who, every day I get a text saying, I got it, or I got it again, right? So it's still out there. We still have to be careful. We're lucky that the variant that we're dealing with right now doesn't seem to be putting people in hospital or causing death at the rate of some of the previous ones, but it's still out there.
Can you go back to Elizabeth had a question about the number of deaths in the US?
Mm-hmm. In just a second. I'm sorry. Yeah. In the US, what was the question?
Was the number?
Is it the number of total deaths?
Yeah, the number of the deaths in the US, like, yeah, I guess total,
Yes,
yeah.
the total death.
Okay.
Oh, right. So in the US right now, we're sitting at over 1 million deaths since the beginning of the pandemic. Maybe Janine, can you do a quick search for today's actual number?
Excellent.
But when I was looking yesterday, we're over 1 million total deaths since the beginning of the pandemic. So
That's a lot of people.
It's a lot of people. It's a lot of people. And our death rate has slowed down now, but it's still there. And as I said, even one person. But we're looking at over 650 million deaths around the globe, and 1 million of those at least in the United States. Okay.
It's a 1.05 million.
1.05 million in the United States. So I'm just going to show you the vaccine rates. I know a lot of us in this community have worked really hard on vaccination. And so just showing the impact that it has, that work hasn't gone unnoticed or without impact. What we know right now is that among those who are vaccinated and boosted, the rates of cases and hospitalizations and deaths are much lower than in those who are unvaccinated. So what you can see here is since vaccination started, there's been over 900,000 cases reported in unvaccinated, compared to 260,000 in those who are vaccinated and boosted, and around 600,000 in those that are just vaccinated, just got their primary series and no booster. And it's dramatic too with when we look at deaths, 8,749 deaths in unvaccinated versus only 700 in the vaccinated. And again, when I say only, that's 700 lives, but I'm looking at the comparison between over 8,000 and 700. And so for all of those of you who have been out there pounding the pavements and doing whatever you can to get folks vaccinated, here's the result of your hard work. And this is why we keep saying, please get vaccinated. And if you're eligible, please get boosted. And we'll talk about that a little more as we go on. Are there any more questions at this point? Okay. So I'm going to keep going. So variants, variants have been terrorizing us since the beginning, right? We had that initial COVID peak, and then we were hit by Delta, and then we were hit by Omicron. So Omicron actually remains the dominant variant in the United States and in New York City. And as you may have heard, there are two lineages, like sub-daughters of Omicron, that are out there right now that are most of the cases. That most of the people who are sick right now have one of these, BA5 and BA4. And BA5 we actually think is a little more contagious than other Omicron subvariants, which is why we saw that little blip upwards in cases over July. And the vaccines that we had, our primary series and the first booster, were not as effective against that BA5 sublineage. The good news is that the booster that's out now, that was released a few weeks ago, has been updated so that it actually will fight both the BA4 and the BA5 subvariants. So it's been altered, it's been updated, and it has that extra ability to recognize and fight those new variants that are out there right now. Everyone's asking, we're getting nervous now. The weather's getting colder. We're heading into winter. We're used to there being a surge in the winter. Are we heading into another surge this fall and winter? And the answer is quite possible, right? People are moving indoors. We're in crowded spaces again. We're going to have family gatherings. People are going to start traveling. We've got some highly contagious variants out there. So it's definitely not the time for us to be relaxing any of those things, not relaxing around vaccination, not relaxing around indoor spacing, mask wearing, being careful, testing before we go to family gatherings, all those things. We know how to do this. It's time for us to keep up our vigilance. We're not in a doomsday scenario. I think we're actually doing okay, but we have to be vigilant. Okay. Oops. Okay, so here's the information about the boosters. So those updated COVID vaccine boosters are now recommended for everyone 12 and above. They're called bivalent, bi meaning that they have two parts to them. The first part is that original vaccine we got way back that covers us against all those forms that were around when the original surge came in. And the second part of it has been updated so that it attacks that BA4 and BA5. And that's why it's called a bivalent booster. All it really means, it's got the original stuff in it, and then it's got some new updated, improved stuff in it. And as long as your last booster or primary series of vaccination was at least 2 months ago, you are eligible to go in and get boosted now. If you had COVID recently, you're going to want to wait 3 months since you had a positive test or were symptomatic with your last episode of COVID. And there's two lots that are available out there, Pfizer and Moderna. We're used to these two peoples. Pfizer is available for your kids too, 12 years and older. Moderna is only for those 18 years and older. And it doesn't matter which one you get. You know, you might have got Pfizer for your first dose and then a Moderna booster. You can go and get whichever one you want now, Pfizer or Moderna. It does not matter. If you had Johnson & Johnson for your primary, and then you got a Moderna booster or you got no booster, you can still go in. So the basic news is either of those, they're both good, and they're both available now. Okay, are there any questions about COVID before we keep moving? And we can circle back to these at the end as well. Okay, so
what about the system? Sorry. So what about those people like myself? I didn't even know I had COVID.
Me too.
And I stayed safe. I had worn my mask. And all of a sudden I was supposed to do a procedure and I had to take a COVID test. And the next thing you know, they like, oh, well, you can't take the procedure, you can't do the procedure because you have COVID. And I'm like, what? I didn't have no symptoms, nothing. And the only thing that I was doing was going to the doctors and back home. Didn't do no social gathering, nothing. So it was kind of amazed that how I got it, don't know when I got it, but I didn't have no symptoms at all. I mean, I thank God. And I didn't even get the vaccine. So God showed me favor, because even hearing the amount of people died, and I have underlying condition, he showed me favor. But then after found out after I had got it, I called my doctor. You know, I had a one of those virtual visits and everything. And they asked me all these questions about my symptoms, and everything was like, no. I had the Department of Health contacted me, but they couldn't pinpoint, because again, like I said, I could not pinpoint on how did I caught it, because all I was doing was going to the doctors, didn't do anything else, and continue wearing my mask. So in my mind, I'm like, is this really airborne? Because I'm not around people. And, the only time if I drop my mask is like, just to go outside and get some air, but nobody wasn't around. So it was kind of strange that I caught it. But then I did get that one Pfizer, but then the next thing you know, they lifted up. So I didn't even be bothered to get the second one. But, I took my flu shot, but it's just kind of crazy how you taking all these vaccines, but then people still get it, people still dying. But then just to hear the total amount of death that occurred from 2019, I think that's when it started, from 2020, 2019 to the present, the amount of death because of this here virus that took so many lives, especially in the United States. I don't even know how many, unless, before the end of the session, how many people died in the state of New York, but that hurted me. That's why I said, well, how many people died? That's really sad.
Yeah, I mean, your story is, thank you for sharing that. I mean, it's the story of so many of us. We don't know where we got it. Some of us were lucky like you were in that we were asymptomatic, and some of us got hit really, really hard, and some of us didn't make it through. And that's why we have tools out there now to protect ourselves with a vaccination. I'm so glad that you went ahead and got that first vaccination. We don't know where we're going next. I'm really trying to be optimistic and let everyone know that we're doing okay right now, but we could get another variant through that hits everyone very hard again. And so if you have the opportunity to go out there and get that second Pfizer shot and complete your first series, so you have that much protection on board, that would be a great thing. I would ask your doctor whether you should go and get the booster so that you've got that protection against the subvariants that are now, because we're not at the end of this. And we want to make sure that everyone on this call makes it through, that every week when we show up or every month when we show up, we're seeing these faces and we know that everyone's been kept safe. So
you saying, so you saying to get the second one and boosters at the same time? Or just or go to my doctor and find out?
What I'm saying is because I don't know, and we won't get into it here about all of your
Okay.
like, your background or whether you've got any other conditions that need to be taken into account, or what the deal is. So what I would say is if you can get on a telehealth with your doctor again and just ask them whether they would recommend that you get the initial Pfizer, so you just complete the Pfizer series before you get a booster, or that you just go straight for that booster given the new variants. But yes, please talk to your doctor about it.
Thank you so much.
You're welcome. I'm going to keep going here on the monkeypox, and we'll just go really quickly through this and the polio so we can get onto the mental health piece. Just so you know, the monkeypox update is that earlier this week, we had a total of 25,000 cases of monkeypox around the US and around 3,500 here in New York City. And again, our numbers are not increasing dramatically. So at the beginning, we were very afraid that the monkeypox illness would spread quickly into vulnerable populations like our children or our elderly. We are not seeing that happen. And so that's the good news. The numbers are slowly going, in some states they're hanging stable, in some states they're going up, and some states are going down. But we're not dealing with a pandemic here. We're not dealing with an epidemic here. And so the information is the same that we have. Monkeypox, we're mostly still seeing it in men who have sex with men. It's not just a sexually transmitted disease, it's transmitted by contact, right? So we all have to be careful. We all have to undertake the same precautions that we have learned during coronavirus about distancing, about washing our hands. But it's not essential for us all to be going out and getting vaccinations. And actually those who are eligible for vaccinations are a very small group, and you can see who's eligible here on this slide. So again, the message is there's no need for a panic. Vaccinations are out there to prevent this, but they're really restricted to the group that's highest at risk, and that's fine. The rest of us who are out there, we're doing okay. Stay safe in the ways that you know how, and there's no panic around this right now. Okay, let's keep going. And this, you can just see again how our case numbers are coming down in terms of monkeypox cases. And then I'm just going to speak very briefly about polio. So polio, was one that we all reacted very kind of strongly to, because once polio gets out into a population, we can really be in trouble. And as most of you know, polio can cause a form of disease that causes paralysis. And so it has a really deep health impact. The good news is that, again, we're not seeing a rise in the number of polio cases. What happened is back in July, one case of paralytic polio was diagnosed in Rockland County. And so the Department of Health started taking samples from wastewater, because polio travels through feces, through poop, right? So people are pooping it out, it's going into the wastewater. So if you sample sewage, you can see where it is. And so when they sampled sewage from a number of counties, they found it in a number of places, that polio virus was in a number of places. And so this is a serious situation because we know it's out there in the community. Now, of all the people who get exposed to polio, only a very few will get the paralytic illness, the paralysis. But because it's such an extreme health event, we really have to make sure that this does not continue to spread. And again, this is a very easily preventable illness with vaccination. We've kept it at bay. We thought we had it eradicated with vaccination. And so the message here is, yes, polio is out there. No, we're not seeing an alarming rise in the number of paralysis from polio, but it is essential that everyone who has not had a full series of polio vaccination gets vaccinated. A full series is 3 shots. Normally kids get 3 shots before their 2nd birthday and then another 4th shot before they're 6. If your child or children in your family or your community have not had their polio shots, it's time now to go and get it. And if you as an adult never completed your primary series, like you never got 3 polio shots, it's time to again go to your doctor and say, hey, I need that polio booster. So do it for yourself. It's an easy fix. It's the only way to stop this spreading. Right now we're hanging stable, but we're not going to hang stable unless people get themselves vaccinated. Okay, so I'm going to stop there. If there's any questions, please drop them in the chat. I'm going to have us move forward with the mental health piece because I think that's really important, but do drop any health questions in the chat and I'll get to those.
Thank you. Thank you, Anu, for taking us through that. I'll go through just a little bit. We want to make sure that we give you time, you know what I mean? We really want to have this conversation. But just to talk about mental wellness, most of you, these are all familiar faces that we see here, but I'm Janine Robinson. Really, you know, Anu and I have been working together since the beginning of COVID and really seeing the impact that it's had on our communities, not only physically, you know, we were out in the community, you know, like all of you, having those conversations with the community, getting them into the vaccine site, you know, administering the vaccines and managing vaccinations and starting sites. And one of the things, and I think that a lot of you may agree, that in doing this work, we got to really start to know the community, and mental wellness is just as important of an aspect of COVID and the impact of that, you know, as the physical impact. And that's one of the things that we saw, you know, being in the community and talking with community. And so we want to, you know, we'll talk a little bit more and give you some statistics, and we'll quickly kind of go through it. But really, it seems to be that now we're kind of getting a little bit of the backlash of the impact. I mean, Elizabeth, I saw your comment in the chat around, you know, all the people that we lost. And, you know, now we're coming to the point where we really want to recognize that we're whole people, and that has an impact on our wellness. And so I'll share my screen here, but really the first question, just want to throw it out to everyone. Even from the poll, it seems like, you know, a lot of folks are comfortable or very comfortable talking about your own mental wellness, as well as talking to others. And then some of us are on either side, whether we may not be as comfortable or very comfortable. But I would love to hear from you when you hear the term mental health or mental wellness. You can put it in the chat if you want to unmute yourself. Like, what is that for you? Like, what is mental wellness? And if you could, if there's something, if anyone's put anything in the chat, please, Anu or Tashi, please share. And if anyone wants to unmute themselves.
Well, I think that Anna Battle from Bethany Baptist Church, I think that mental health is, it's very, very sensitive. It's a sensitive situation. And most people who are undergoing various changes in whatever, financial or personal changes, they don't acknowledge mental health as a problem for themselves. Like, for example, me, I didn't think I had a problem, but I think I did have a problem when I couldn't understand, why am I getting sick? I do all the precautions. I did everything I'm supposed to do. So it makes you feel in a down, you feel down. And, but you have to, but I realized that I had to talk to my doctor, which I go, I record everything, my sugar, my blood pressure. So I would record how I'm feeling and keep a diary on a daily basis. So I was able to help myself get out of whatever depressions, in addition to reading my Bible, praying, scripture, thoughts for the day. All of that was included in my well-being, and it helped me help other folk to get treatment that they need or realize that they need help.
Wow. Thank you for sharing that. You know, that's one of the things, sharing, you know what I mean? Your story, the stories, you know, and a lot of times, you know, we don't know what other people are dealing with, and just, you know, you sharing this story and your journey of healing. I mean, we've shifted that your journey of healing is not only including you keeping in track of your blood pressure, but it's also keeping track of how you're feeling, which is great. And you created that for yourself. It's beautiful. Anyone else? What is mental wellness for you?
We got
Alafia, this is
comments in there. I'm sorry, Kafra, I'm just going to quickly read these and we'll come back to you. There's a couple of comments in the chat. Myra Van Moor said mental health refers to the combination of emotional and mental areas working together for the person as a whole, which assists in producing a quality way of life. And Annette Kelly said overall stability, balance, work-home life, sense of peace, hopeful. And from Rosa Ocampo, the physical, emotional, spiritual well-being of a person.
That's great. That's great. Thank you.
Sorry, Kafre.
Alafia. I was just going to say, for me, mental well-being is just that. It's having for me, it's action. It's doing the things that I need to do to take care of myself mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and physically, because I know I've been diagnosed with bipolar disorder, major depressive disorder, anxiety disorder, and I'm an insomniac. So with medication, but also with doing daily meditation, walking 10,000 steps a day, doing Reiki, doing yoga, my diet plays into that. Doing those things create for me the support I need for my mental well-being.
Indeed.
So great. Thank you everyone for sharing. I mean, I'll, give you the definition, but everyone is, we're right on. We're seeing it's mental health includes emotional, it's psychological, it's your social well-being. It's how we think, how we feel, how we act. It's how we handle stress, how we relate to others, how we make choices. And it's important at each stage of our life, from childhood all the way up to adulthood. And it shifts a lot of times depending on sometimes, what life stages those are in, that you're in.
Janine, you might just have to refresh your share screen for us to get back into your slides.
Let's see. Thank you. How's that?
Let's see. Yes, great.
Okay,
thank you.
perfect.
Got it.
And then, one thing, when things are perhaps unbalanced with our mental wellness and, our thinking, mood, behavior, it all can be affected. But one thing, when it comes to mental health, mental wellness, you'll notice even we've started to change our language around it as we've started to get more comfortable. And so really a lot, and educate ourselves. And so a lot of times when things are out of balance, to the point of a lot of examples that you've given tonight, it's a whole person. And so sometimes there's biological factors, genes, brain chemistry, sometimes it's life experiences, such as trauma or abuse that impacts, family history of mental health issues. And so all of these factors impact our well-being. And, even when Dr. Anu was going through kind of where we are as a public physically, those things impacted us, and even collectively, when we look at, the second bullet that says life experiences such as trauma or abuse or different life experiences that have happened, we've all been through a collective traumatic event, experiencing multiple pandemics. And so, one of the things as Tasha, you had, get back to life, back to reality, but as we get back to life, that's one of the things that we just want to remember, that we want to remember as we interact with each other, that we want to remember as we interact with each other, that, we've been through something these last 3 years, especially, a lot of you out there, putting the work in, working to make sure that our communities are better, are healthier. And so just acknowledging that and having the conversations and having comfort. You know, we're not alone. It's a whole over 8 million or almost 8 million people in the world. Like everyone was impacted to some degree by this collective event. And so it's okay, you know, if things aren't okay. And there's also, just to go back, and you'll get these slides, but a lot of times there's a lot of myths around mental health and mental wellness. And so, you know, we just want to be aware and be cognizant, and I won't go through them right now, but this link kind of shows, just to get yourself familiar with what a lot of people may be thinking when it comes to mental wellness. But real quick, want to dive into, again, how did the pandemic impact us? And again, you know, a lot of us have experienced the impact, whether it's anxiety, whether it's worry. And globally, you know, the pandemic has triggered at least a 25% increase in the prevalence of anxiety and depression. This is, you know, something that impacted us. And really, when you ask, okay, why? Like, what are some of those factors? A lot of it was the isolation, you know, because we were dealing with something that had us, you know, part of our humanity is in us relating to others. And so part of us keeping ourselves and each other safe was us having to separate. And so that impacted, that coupled with the constraints on people's ability to work, or the ways in which we worked, shifting, being able to get support from loved ones and folks in our communities. Also, you know, loneliness, and even just the fear of infection, or for those of us that, you know, we caught COVID, you know, it was one of those pieces to some of the points of some of you have shared, the vulnerability, like, I did everything right. How did I get it? And that has an impact. And then of course, for those healthcare workers and those that were really on the front line working, you know, with COVID and making sure that we stayed well, you know, exhaustion, you know, so when you start piling on, before we may have had isolation or a lot of these things in separate, but now they got layered on top of each other, and it's had an impact. When you look at a lot of the figures, we're seeing young people and women were really hit. And as we look at a couple of other figures, it starts to kind of tell a story a little bit about, and some of these figures tell a little bit of a story about kind of why young people and women, when it comes to our mental wellness, were hit. You know, some of it has to do with, one, there were disruptions in, you know, the mental health for providers being able to provide those services. We traditionally, it was something that, you know, whether it's finding a therapist or a group circle or something like that, that you may be able to participate in, that was cut off. And so a lot of these pipelines to being able to get support were cut off because of, you know, because of the COVID. And then also in 2020, one of the things that we're seeing, that we saw, is because we went into this pandemic and it impacted, you know, our mental health and our mental wellness, a lot of governments, a lot of work, a lot of countries, states, really, we didn't have a lot of funding when it came to mental health. It was something that we put on the back burner. And now we're seeing a lot of the impacts and gaps in care, you know, and even globally, you know, when we look at a lot of our lower income countries, I mean, some of these, you're looking at a ratio of 1 mental health worker per 100,000 people. And so now we're kind of on the, in a way, in looking at some of this data, it's a bit of a silent second pandemic in a way, because everyone was impacted to some degree, and we're starting to see a strain on the system globally. And I'll quickly go through these because I want to make sure that we have time for the discussion. So you'll get this information. But one thing that's interesting in looking at this, because we saw, and we were also a lot more, you know, by ourselves, you know, whether we were going through isolation, we have spent a lot more time, I think, with ourselves. And one of the things that you see is we're shifting a little bit as a society with the importance of mental health. Like, if you look at this, thinking of your own health, do you think mental or physical health is more important? or your mental health is more important. And you see, we're now looking at 79%. Or how is your mental health and physical health treated? And you see the impact of how it's treated in the in healthcare systems. So you see, we're now seeing that it's something, it's important, but then now at the same time, we're seeing a lot of stresses on our systems and gaps in care. Quickly in the US, again, our youth, have really been impacted. Just one of these figures, really, when we're looking at teens, about 60% may be experiencing some form of depression. And 1 in 3 may not necessarily get the care that's needed. And so again, it's highlighting care is needed and some of those gaps in care. And, again, this just kind of shows the impact of COVID on our mental wellness. At the very beginning, you see March 2020, I think we were at about 43% here. And then we almost went up a third about 3 months later in July. And now we've come down, I believe we're at about 48% now. So it's still high compared to before the pandemic in the impact of worry, stress. In this particular survey, people were asked, in the last week, have you felt stress or disturbed, around your mental wellness? And so, it's one of the things to know that if you have moments where you may feel a little bit off balance, everyone is experiencing that. And we're coming up with new ways and different ways to take care of ourselves kind of holistically, as a lot of people have kind of shared. And then let's see, can you see this? Okay, perfect. Any questions? I'm talking a lot. Okay, just quickly go through. This is the piece that I wanted to mention. When it comes to younger adults and women, a lot of, and even in impact, a lot of youth and women were impacted because a lot of times in talking even with youth in the community, we see they were concerned about a lot of their elders. They were concerned about their community. When it comes to women, especially mothers, being able to, especially when it comes to mental health, being able to find those resources because of the gaps in care, there's sometimes extra worry, extra stress because some of those gaps in care and not necessarily being able to find, those resources. And so, that's one of the things that the data is really saying. Everyone's experiencing worry, stress. Our women and our young people have been, impacted.
And our seniors.
Yes. Say more about that.
Yeah, as a senior citizen.
Senior hearing. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, as a senior citizen and living in a senior development, I saw the impact of loneliness and not being able to go to their appointments. So myself and a few others we adopted a senior citizen where we help them. We go to the store for them. We take their blood pressure. We go to the doctor with them. We go shopping with them. We do their nails. A lot of things for the senior citizens. And the quality of life has improved somewhat because they see somebody cares. Now, the quality of life on the outside is because of the job situation. People lost their jobs during the COVID. People lost their homes during the COVID. So the quality of life has a lot to do with the mental health of the community as a whole, I believe.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I mean, definitely everything, those pieces that you pointed out impact our mental wellness. And even if we are able to access care, are we able to afford care? So all those impact. Thank you for sharing that. And, here in New York, 1 in 5, again, this is all, and I want to open up the dialogue, but this is all to say, and especially our communities of color, I wanted to skip to this, but when we look at access to mental health care, and as we're looking through a lot of these figures, everyone has been impacted, to your point. And now, kind of similar to when we went through the pandemic and we saw that a lot of our structures had failed us, we're coming up with, to your point, our own systems of being able to create support. And forums like this are important in the same way that, we had to kind of start crossing barriers, crossing lines a little bit of, can you put your mask on? Have you been vaccinated? From these figures and looking, this, we're looking at with this 25%. So that's like 1 in 4. When you think about people that you're talking to are experiencing anxiety, are young people around 18%, are adults with probable depression around 18%, and then our young people around 28%. And this is parents saying, hey, I'm seeing something, COVID is negatively impacting, and I'm seeing it reflected in my child. And so it's really, going to be, and we'll get into some tips further on in this discussion, but on us to be able to share resources like this is NYC Well, a number that you can call, an app, being able to share resources, whether it's, therapists, things that we do, our holistic, things that work for us, sharing it. It's at the point where our mental health providers and service providers are overwhelmed right now. And so now it's one of those things where it's really up to us to be able to access those resources that we do know about when it comes to therapists, things online, supporting each other, listening to each other, because, we're all impacted. We've all been impacted by COVID. And so, really, if all these figures and all of this data is to say, we just really want to equip you now tonight, just with the ability to be able to speak and also to listen to one another, because it's important when it comes to our wellness as a community as a whole, and then on an individual level. So with that, and then were there any questions or anything like that? Right now we want to really turn it over to you, and Tashi, I'll give you, if you want to take this piece. We've kind of talked about a lot of facts and figures, but we really want to kind of share where you're at right now.
So yeah, at this point, before we go further, I was very serious when I said that I wanted this to be a safe space where you all can feel comfortable to be vulnerable, to be honest, to engage with your fellow community member up here right now. I know that some of you may work as community health workers. Some of you may work in public health. Some of you are just folks that come to these webinars and just are here, right? So I am going to stop the recording at this point of this webinar, and I'm just going to keep it us, okay? And I want you all to feel comfortable sharing.
Mm-hmm.
So, and for those of you who are watching the replay of this, there's going to be a part 2 on Tuesday, October 4th. That is next Tuesday. We're going to have Dr. Patrice Douglas here. She's a therapist. She's going to take this a step further. And if you all want to join, we're going to have a couple of sharing circles happening. Please come and join us for that so that you can be a part of a conversation like this. Okay. Thank you all. If you're watching the replay, thank you for watching, and we're going to continue the conversation.